Hey, Anthony, thanks for coming on the show today.
Yeah. Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How
Good.
are you today?
I'm good. I am excited to be here and heard a lot about the show, so I'm just excited to be here.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. It's very nice to meet you and have you on today. I know you've got a lot going on. You've had a lot
Yes.
going on this year.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Done
So
some
a lot of
things.
a
I've
lot of
done.
exciting things happening, kind of wrapping up 2023, getting set for 2024.
Yes, it's been a very challenging but exciting and fulfillment type of year for me. Once I actually got into a more leadership role of managing myself and other people on my own type deal, I like to say.
Would you say that that's kind of been a journey into leadership and you've been working towards that, or has that kind of been an assumed role that you've had for a long time and it's more transitioning into this community in oil and gas?
Yeah, I feel like I've been in the leadership role for a long time in my life. I just never knew how to channel in on my talents that I actually had that quality. And I think now that I've been more kind of engulfed in what it is to be a leader, I think I've been able to become a better leader and and then so that transition has changed and I've leveled up in the aspects of who I'm leading and what kind of organization I'm leading. So I think that has transitioned in time, but it's not as far as I think I've always been a leader, but I've always been in training. I feel like a leader
Right.
in training, but I've led people, I've led an organization, but never at the magnitude in which I'm at right now. So I just feel like it's an evolution of Anthony, Bolton
Yeah.
type of thing. So
Yeah, absolutely. I understand that. And so it's like a lot of learning like who you're not or what it takes or who you are as a person. And then like you said, as a leader, like that's something that's been within you
100%.
and just learning like what kind of impact you want to make and kind of getting with the right people and then you can just blow it up.
That's the plan. I'm really grateful for. I got some really great supporters in the community that have been with me, just tooth and nail. Blood, sweat, and tears. They've just been on my side, and sometimes I don't know why. I kind of feel like I want to know why, but at the same time, I just feel like I have great energy. I got a good soul. I feel, and I just think that I think people can gravitate towards that,
Right.
and so I don't really have to ask for a lot of things. It just kind of come to me based off of just who I am as an individual. And this stuff has just been gravitating towards me as I've been pouring myself into more of a community. I want to be a community leader one day. And I think since I've been kind of gravitating towards that, more comes to you. The more you give, the more you receive, kind of thing.
Right.
Hands open type of vibe. So.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so as you've poured into the community and that's been receptive, you've been able to grow. So do you ever, kind of stop and take that personal inventory and like check in and see like, okay, this is working, this we're going in the right direction? Or I mean, because it sounds like it's really just been like a natural evolution with faith and that self-confidence and just like relating to people. And do you have a lot of those milestones along the way where you're reassured and you're going in the right direction or
Right.
you're making the right connections?
I do a lot of self evaluating before I do anything else because I like to be able to. I'm one of those people that likes to check myself before someone has to check me.
Absolutely.
So I'm just a
Yeah.
big fan of that. I'm like a firm believer of you only got to tell me once.
Right.
I hope I can keep living by that motto, but that's the goal. Is that I only want to be have to told once about something that I'm good at corrective actions. I'm great with that.
Yeah.
Constructive criticism. I'm great with that. But I'm my biggest critic. And
Same.
so I'm like heavy on myself about everything. I don't
Yeah.
care. It's a photo. I had to look at it like 19 times to make sure it's good to put out. Even my writing, because I've been in school since probably 2012 nonstop. And I finally
Okay. Yeah.
graduate, next year, thank God. And that has alone with all the papers I've been writing and the scrutiny from all the different professors.
Yeah.
So they help out a lot with the building, as you would be so mad at them most of the time, like I
Right.
am sometimes. But honestly, they keep me accountable.
Right.
So the self evaluation happens through sometimes a lot through my professors, but it also happens through me and then also the men that mentor me as well. Men and women, actually. I can't just say men. I have women that I've been mentored by that are very structured. Like one is my wife, of course. She's heavy and she's been in the industry for 30 years, just doing business. And I'd be a fool to not take her on as a mentor because I have
Right.
not been doing business for 30 years. So in the essence of that, I have a strong team, accountability team that helps me stay accountable, plus my own self beat up, I guess you would say. I don't know,
Yeah.
sometimes. I just feel like that has a lot to do with my growth patterns, as long as I'm receptive to that type of information and I utilize
Yeah,
it.
and I guess I can understand that in my own way. It's like a lot of that, wanting more for yourself, out of
Right.
yourself, contributing to the community and, the industry that you're in. And you've got to break down your own walls. You've
Yes.
got to be your own advocate and say, I can do better than this. Because you may have somebody that say, well, hey, nobody's perfect or we all make mistakes. But when you're a leader or you want that level of success, you have to say, no, this isn't enough. We can actually do more. I know I can do more.
Right.
Because then you're not satisfied. So then you almost feel like you're lying to yourself.
Right.
Because if you don't hold yourself accountable and commit to continuing to break down those walls, you can't grow as a leader. So
100%.
it's like that's a process on its own.
I agree 100%. And it's tough because the industry it hasn't been a smooth ride since I've been here. And I broke out in the oil field back in 2011, 2010, and well, right around 2011. And it was tough because that day, I think it was like $120 a barrel. So we were blowing and going, and I just got here. I didn't even know what was going on. I didn't know what a pump jack looked like, nothing. And I was like, this is where I'm staying? They're like, yeah, you're going to be at this trailer, at this man
Oh,
camp.
wow.
And forget about the rest of your family for the next, I don't know, however long. So, because it was nonstop back then. We worked 18 hours a day, and we just, got a little bit of sleep, just enough to get up and do it again. And I think that turned me into a man, to be honest. That type of
I hear
work,
you. The
built me
oil
up.
field
Yeah.
will build you.
Yes, it's either break
Whether-
you or build you.
Yeah,
Only the
whether
strong
you,
survive.
yeah, and then when
Yeah.
you do, you come out of that like you're a totally different person.
Right. Yeah, so I want to say it definitely made me tough. It definitely gave me thick skin on some cases, and
Yeah.
to where, you have to be out there and everybody's on edge trying to get stuff done.
Yeah.
And so you can't take a lot of things personal, which I did in the beginning because I didn't know no better.
Right.
But I had to realize, like, hey, everybody's under pressure, and so everybody's got to answer to somebody. And so after I learned that, I was like, I just had to do what I have to do to make sure I had a successful me before I'm worried about somebody else and what they thought
Yeah,
about.
absolutely. And you have that, like, you want more.
Right.
You want to do more for people, but you have to be your own leader first.
Right.
You have to figure out how you're going to make it. And I definitely learned quite a bit of that the hard way myself when I came to the oil field. You have no idea. You don't know
Right.
what you're getting yourself into when you come
Yeah.
out here, especially when back in 2011, that those were different times than they are now. And the evolution of the oil field, you have to be able to change and grow with it and
Right.
understand where it's at. But then you got to take the reins and make it better and contribute. But you have to be built first before you can do any of that. You have to understand what's going on,
Right.
with the part that you play and being able to withstand the elements, the people, the drive, the scarce region.
Right,
You're just
yeah.
driving out into nothing, and you still have another 60 miles to location, and you're just wondering where you are.
All lease road too.
On all lease roads,
road,
and
right, yeah.
that can mentally break you. I worked on one project where the speed limit was 15, and and it was such a bad road.
Oh Lord.
And you would get run off if you sped and the landowners would sit out there and watch people, like that was their thing.
Nothing else to do.
And people did get run off, and most of us didn't, but everyone struggled mentally with that road because it didn't matter where else you were staying, how it could be a smooth drive, get there in under an hour.
Right.
You get to that lease road, it was 40 minutes.
At least.
And it did not matter what you did. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered. It took you
Right.
40 minutes.
Every bit of it.
And then that was just starting your day. And then
Yeah.
you show up and things aren't right, or, they're not always very encouraging or positive in the safety meetings in the morning, or it's raining, or it's been raining
yeah.
and now it's muddy. And so
Muddy. Jeez.
the mud, and then how it doesn't come off your boots. It just, you get more of it, and you just have to,
Just create a whole nother boot.
you just create a hole. You
No,
grow
right.
2-3 inches.
Right. I could use that.
I definitely don't need that, but it's just the idea that like you are mentally taxed
Right.
just from that. That's not even performing your job, having a conversation with anyone, or thinking about anything else you've got going on. And so, the oil field can make you or break you just mentally.
I try to tell my friends that a lot. A lot of friends from back home in Arizona or wherever I've traveled to, and I have friends all over the U.S. and they're always like, Anthony, I want to go to the oil field. I want to do what you're doing. I'm like, Everybody wants to go to the oil field until you really realize what kind of work is being done out here. The sacrifice for away from your family, away from your kids, away from your wife or your spouse or whatever it is that you have to sacrifice. Even the women away from their spouses and their kids, because they're out here sacrificing just as well as the men are. I've seen both, and it's a really big sacrifice that you have to understand. What are you willing to do to, and then obviously as you level up, then that that work field kind of will start, balance of life and field will balance itself out. The higher up you go, sometimes it doesn't, because sometimes you got to take the place of others. But yeah, I was in the field real heavy in the beginning of my career, and obviously as I was evolving, I'm not in the field as much. But I definitely can be a guy that can go into a meeting, and I'm not just a boss that can just tell you about how I want things done. I could tell you how I used to do it.
Exactly.
And it gives somebody a lot more encouragement than the guy that comes in that doesn't know, hasn't been out there in the field, hasn't really been out there in the struggle, hasn't been cold, freezing, hands frozen, the gloves aren't working, sledgehammer to the knee, to the shin accidentally,
Right.
trying to beat frac tanks together.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a respect for people that have worked in the field and worked their way up. There's a disconnect when you know that this person in the office has never been in the field,
right,
or a family member gets hired, picked over someone that could have been promoted internally. There's a lot of friction there, and that's something that's never changed, and it's just kind of a known animosity that that exists. But even for me, like, yes, hands frozen, remembering like how much of a relief it would be for someone's diesel truck to be running and feeling that little bit of warmth from the exhaust.
I used to use the actual light tower.
Oh yeah.
So there's like a little pipe on the light tower, and I'd have my hands right there. You can only have them there for so long, but I'd warm them hands right back up. That's why I used to use the generator ones.
But those are small moments of refuge, and that to survive,
right,
and to be able to just kind of refuel that mental tank.
I think I warmed my burrito up, I feel like, on one of those.
I have seen more men on the pipeline and in the oil field warm up their lunch on an engine or on top of their machine or in the defrost on their truck. Like you'll see it. You'll see it. It's getting close to break time or lunchtime.
Start it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get in that truck, you're sweating like crazy, but your burrito's hot. For sure.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You got to withstand all the different elements out here. I don't know what's worse, the winters or the summers, because I've been in Orla in the middle of the summer on those caliche pads.
Wow, yeah.
But it's like the sun's just reflecting off the caliche, and then there's not an ounce of wind. It's just still, and it's like 1:15 on location. And, you know better than to overwork yourself. They're saying, like sometimes there were a couple times we would have to come in early because it was just too hot in the middle of the day to work. So we'd have to get there, 5 a.m.
Yeah, true.
And, so that there's
just work an earlier shift to get the same amount of work done.
Yeah, and you got to do the same amount of work. But because you could literally fall out from heat exhaustion.
100%.
Very easily. And it's just, you're so miserably hot. But then when you're so miserably cold, and, I remember I had the FR coveralls and FR coat, the wool socks, the double layer gloves. But when you're a welder's helper at that time, when I was a helper, there's only so much you can physically do all layered up like that. Sometimes you have to sacrifice a layer just to be able to move and do the actual work. Or you're just, kind of having to deal with it then it warms up and you're having to peel it off. And
yeah, it gets tough. I actually, to touch on that last note, I wrote a book during my master's degree class. My capstone project was my teacher was like, how I was working 16 hours a day, but still was keeping a 3.5 GPA. And she was like, you need to write a book about this stuff, because I know everything. Me and her talked on the regular, because I wasn't always able to meet deadlines on assignments because I would be working. I would do voice memos with a tape recorder or on my phone sometimes, whatever was most convenient. And then I would take those notes and I would go and I'd write them on the computer, and then I would formulate them into a paper. And I would just take those notes throughout my break, throughout the day. I've had ideas. I would always jot them down to my phone. And it's easier to talk something out than trying to write stuff out.
Yeah.
And so I wrote a book about that, how, I got bumped several times, and then actually a company paid for my degree, and what in their policy was that, what the vice president wrote was like, hey, we're paying for your degree, but we want to advance you within the company. And so
Oh,
they
right.
paid for the degree, but I kept getting bumped by other guys that, whatever the case may have you. So I'm like, I don't think the upper level even knows that I took that degree to another company,
Wow.
because
Yeah,
I had to.
I could
Well,
see that
what was I
happening.
supposed to do, at that
Yeah.
point?
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to evolve and do something that my degree was in, and which was in safety. So I wanted to do something else, and that's kind of how that happened. But those elements help me. The Oilfield has created some amazing stories for me, though. I really can't even say anything.
Yeah.
I have no negative. I mean, even all the stuff I've been through, I really don't have. It has done nothing but been a blessing for me and my family, more than I can ever imagine. So even when I
Right.
wasn't even making a lot of money, even back then, that was a lot of money.
Right.
To back home Arizona, they're like, whoa, hold up, you're making way more money than the average some of these lawyers are making over here. So.
Mm-hmm.
We worked for it, though. I mean, we worked for
Absolutely.
it, day and night. So, but yeah, I wrote a book about that. So it's called Oilfield Heart: One Man's Life Saved by Education, because that's kind of what has been a driving force for me, is being able to stay in school this past 10 years straight, to help get me into places to make sure that I wasn't passed up again, that I met all the check marks, and that I would just have to be bumped based off circumstance, not off of qualifications.
Right.
So I put all those things in place. Now today, I'm probably a bad man today. You look at my
Right.
profile today, you'd have to
You.
really have to like
Yeah.
somebody else to not say I'm not qualified for whatever
Right.
I'm trying to file for. So,
Well, let me ask you this. Did you ever feel discouraged during all of those times, or were you always just so motivated and focused that you would use it as a driving force to keep going? Because I know there were many times in the field where I'm like, what am I doing with my life?
yeah.
And you have those breaking points, but then you persevere and you keep going. Did you ever feel discouraged by it, or was it always like you knew who you were and you knew what you wanted and you just stayed on that grind and made
I
it
feel like I
happen?
have been discouraged a lot, because I had my yeah, I have been discouraged. Let me just say this: I have been discouraged a lot, but it seems like throughout all when you break through that cloud, as they say, and you look back and you're like, whoa, I actually made it. So it's hard for me to look back and see those discouraged moments, because I've had so much good things happen so far, and I hate that, because I really don't have a lot of those moments in my head anymore, because I'm so, like, I call it Workaholics Anonymous. That's like one of my taglines, because I am literally that. Like, and I need to start looking back. I don't need those moments to give me motivation today. What I do today and helping other people is what gives me the motivation today. So I've created new memories. Those times, though, during that time, were discouraging, because I did not know what was next for me. I thought
Absolutely.
I could never. I did trucking for 8 years. So I drove trucks for 8 years, and I started as a water truck driver, then a winch truck
Hmm.
driver, then a kill truck driver, and then I went into the hot roller. That was like my last in the service side of it. I did that for like 3 years. Then I went where all truck drivers go to haul crude oil.
Yeah.
That's like the retirement home for truck drivers.
Right.
And so I went and did crude oil for 2 years, but by that time I had just finished my bachelor's degree in emergency management. I had my associates in occupational health. I had finished my bachelor's degree in emergency management, which is kind of still in that same field. And I was like, no one's going to give me a job. Every time I apply for a job, they always try to offer me a trucking job. So there is moments where I was just like, I'm never going to make it. And then finally, when I met my wife, she talked me into moving to Midland, Odessa. She was like, I'm telling you, you come here, you don't need a job, you'll find a job within a week. I was like, there's no way. She's like, there's no way. She's like, yeah, I'm telling you. So I moved, because I had all the key friends where I lived, and I could not still get into the realm in which I wanted to jump into. I couldn't get out of this trucking thing to save my life. It made good money, but I was done with it. At
Right.
that point I was done. And so when I moved here, I had a job within a week, but it was only because the other individual that they hired above me, actually they told me, no, we're sorry, we hired somebody else. So I'm like, oh my goodness, I came all the way out here thinking I was gonna didn't get the job.
Like I knew it.
Yeah, and then a week later at 7 a.m, she calls me and she says, hey, you still want to get that? You still want that position? I was like, yeah. She was like, okay. Even then, when she offered it to me, because the guy had like wrecked the company vehicle and did all this stuff, right? So I
Yeah.
was like Rudy in the fourth quarter. It's the only reason why I got the job, You know, so I was
Yeah,
like, I
I
just
could
came
see
in,
that.
scored a touchdown because
Yeah.
but I had to convince her. No, she already had me. I had to convince the director of safety. I was on the phone for him for 15, 20 minutes. He's like, okay, well, let's talk to the vice president. The vice president called me. I had to talk to him for 20, 30 minutes. By the time I got done talking to all three of them, my phone battery was low, and I felt like I was just exhausted. But I pulled it off. She called me back and said, congratulations, you got the job. We're going to start you out at this amount of money. And I was like, oh, Craig, well, I'm thinking like, whoa, I just started getting this. The director calls me back like, I'm sorry, she said that wrong. It's $20,000 less. I said, oh my God, this is just, but I was just
What
so
a
happy to
mess.
get the job, right? So I
Right.
didn't really care. But yeah, that's kind of been the transitioning period for me. I probably went a little further, but that's where I actually started this part of my career is after that point, though.
And I understand because when you get into a specific job that's demanding,
Right.
like the driving a truck, there are people that it's hard to keep CDL drivers out here.
Right.
And that's what everybody will tell you. They'll offer you a sign-on bonus and everything. It's hard to get CDL drivers. So people want to keep you in that seat because it's needed. It's always a demand. But
And if you're good,
and if you're
you're
good,
hard to replace.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, it can be good money, but at the end of the day, it's not always just about the money. It's not always just about, okay, now it's a job because you've kind of mastered that.
Right.
You've made it that far. You want to be on the next level, but
Right.
damn, like where's the door? You're just going in this circle and you're trying to break through, and then you've got all of these obstacles just trying to get up on that next level.
Right.
But now you can see that,
And they offer you more money.
and they offer you more money, and so they're trying to keep you on that. But you have to, it's risky.
Very.
Because you're like, I want to make this next move. Am I really ready? Is it time? And so you're just going on faith and hope and just, kind of beating against that door to see if it's going to open, because that's where you want to be. But you never can be certain that you've made the right choice until you look back and you're like, oh, yeah, of course I was supposed to struggle in
Right.
the oil field and do all
Right.
those things. But at the time, you're telling yourself, yeah, you're going to get there. But then there's moments where you're like, am I really going to get there?
Yeah,
Because
true.
you're way out in the field and it just seems like that's all there is. But when you look at how life can continuously evolve, especially when you get on those levels where you're meeting people that want to help you.
Yeah, very true.
And that's when doors open. And so you've proved it to yourself, you've proved it to, the world that you can make it, that you're a player, that you're a leader, that you're willing to do what it takes. And recording those memos, calling your teacher,
Right.
writing a book about it.
Right.
Because it's like, hey, this is substance, and this is your story, and that's a very unique story. And you're right. And so all the achievements, I mean, this is definitely a time that I'm sure you're celebrating and you're excited and grateful and just all the wonderful things. And then taking all of that and going into 2024.
And when I'll share something with maybe some of the new guys that may come out into the oil field and so forth, just to have some clarity on that. I came down to the oil field married, and I think we had been married maybe 3 years, somewhere in that realm. And when we got to like a settled in point, we were actually we got divorced in 2018. So we moved down there in like 20, I moved down in 2011 to test the water to see how things were. Then they moved down, my wife and her 2 kids moved down in 2014, and we didn't even 2013, we didn't even last 2 years. So just for some of the guys to understand that I left without my wife to come and explore this opportunity, because obviously money and opportunity and things like that. And it worked out. So I brought the family down, but the enormous amount of work, neglect, and things like that broke us apart.
Yeah.
And so, I don't mind, I'm not there, I'm never there, things like that. So that fell apart. And so in 2018 is when I kind of decided, like, I was in a downward spiral because I really didn't know what I was going to do next. I was stuck in this rut. I had these degrees for no reason. No one would hire me.
Right.
And so I'm like, I'm just going to be in trucks forever. So I didn't really excited about trucking no more. I really was I wasn't even really making that much money no more because I wasn't a go-getter, because if you don't pick up loads, you don't get paid type thing.
Right.
So I wasn't really a true go-getter like I was when I first started. And they start seeing that. And they're like, well, what are we doing here? Anthony, you're all right? I'm like, I'm just not motivated no more. And so when I met my new wife, she kind of was saying like, you should try something else, go somewhere else. Because I had been in Hobbs, New Mexico. I'll just say where I was at, or Eunice, New Mexico, Hobbs, New Mexico area for like since almost 7 years total with both places. And so when that happened, the transition here, I can't even imagine. The transition to Midland, Odessa has been like the most, probably like the best decision I've ever made in my life, to be honest. Because if I didn't take that chance, that risk by coming over here, I don't know where I would be at. And if I was still sitting over there waiting for, I might have moved back to Arizona and say, you know what, this isn't for me. And this happens to a lot of people. They move somewhere, they come back, they're like, this isn't for me, And then everybody has aspirations of doing great until they realize what it takes to become great.
Absolutely.
So that was my story up to this point. But yeah, I got to give it up to the Permian Basin and Midland, Odessa, and all the organizations I'm a part of today that have embraced me. I mean, it's just been amazing. So.
Well, and it just makes it worth it.
Yes.
And I feel like I can relate somewhat because when I came out here, I was staying in Pecos, and it's just such a soul crusher to live on the outskirts of the Permian Basin because you're just so far away.
Right.
And then you're like just to get into the hub of Midland, Odessa, then you're so far away from everyone else in your life. If they're not here, they're trying to come here and it doesn't work out, and then it can beat you down, especially after you finish those degrees and you've done all that work, and then you're like, what was this for?
Right.
And so then to be able to look back in hindsight and say, thank goodness I stayed. It was worth it.
Yes.
And there's so much more here, and I feel like I'm tapping into that a little bit now, where it's like, wow, there are really great people here. There are people that want to help and see you succeed, and not just help you because they for the sake of helping, but because they see what you have to offer. They see what you're willing to do, because when you're a hard worker, but then you get discouraged because you just, your marriage failed or, family fell apart because of it. It's hard to go back into a field job and remotivate yourself. And so to be able to break through that, I can understand transitioning over from Hobbs to Midland. It's a different world over here. There's so much more to it, and I'm grateful for the Permian Basin too in very similar ways, because you can feel beat down in the field, neglected, overlooked. You're a dime a dozen. Nobody 100%. Really cares. Doesn't matter if you're killing it every day. You're the first one there and the last to leave. You have to almost pay your dues in the field. You earn that. You contribute and you find yourself. And then if you can withstand long enough to kind of come into that leadership or come into these circles where things are happening. And then you can make things happen. That when you're in a place where it's like nobody's even in that conversation, we're just hands on location here. Yeah. And some people, they've got 2 ex-wives and child support and a DWI they're paying for and lawyers and but they're really stuck.
Big time, yeah.
And that you can get big time stuck like that.
Yeah.
And so it's scary. It can be very scary when you're in it, but to be able to look back on it, I'm sure a lot of those miles that you've traveled to get to where you are, they're really far in your rearview mirror now, but they're back there.
I definitely don't like to drive. I'll tell you that much. I drive when I have to, but in the beginning when I got out of that truck, I was like, look, I don't want to drive no more, because I drove my whole house. She's like, well, you could drive. Like, I got paid to drive.
Right.
I don't get paid to drive no more.
Right.
So back then I got paid to drive. I don't get paid to drive no more. But I'm truly excited of all the people that have really embraced me here locally, and how receptive they are of letting me be a part of like some of the nonprofits I'm a part of. I don't know if we can mention them or not, but anyways, we definitely have a lot of connections with a lot of people that my company has, and I give back a lot during the community, so I definitely give back a lot.
I bet that's a great feeling, because you'd always wanted to do that, but then to physically be able to do it, that's a whole different level.
Yeah, because when I was in the field, I couldn't be on a board, or I couldn't be, in different meetings and conferences and flying here and flying there for different organizations. That didn't happen. You better be up at this time and get off at late this time. So, it's hard enough to try and get off for a doctor's appointment or anything. You are expected, the safety meetings at 7. If you're working 10s or 12s or 14s or 18s, like that is it. Yeah. That's it. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how far you've got to drive. Like there's not a lot. There's no error. There's no room for error in the oil field when it comes to, you want this job, you need to be here and you need to work it. Right. Especially if you don't know anybody. And I feed my guys. So I have guys that do field work in the field, and I actually go, and if it's 200 guys, I fed 200 guys steak, baked potatoes, loaded baked potatoes, the whole works. I mean, I've done that several times for different sites that I have. So I always do that because, a lot of times think that it's just all about receiving all the time from a company, and the companies really appreciate me because I'm always trying to give back. Like, is it my turn again? Like, well, the other guys haven't even went yet. Well, you let me know if you may go again, because I know how it is to be out there nonstop, dirty, just working. And so I always try to be that guy that gives back, even in that aspect. Even if I'm meeting with company reps, that's more of a lot of times in this business, a lot of people think it's just taking out the company rep. But honestly, I'm more of like,
Right.
I've been a guy in the field my whole life.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm always trying. I know that's where the decisions are made outside the field, but the work, the hard like laborious get it done stuff is done in the field. And I
Absolutely.
always want to give those guys, when they see me, they're like, there goes Anthony, because Anthony's gonna come correct. I don't show up with pasta, I don't show up with hamburgers, I show up with steaks,
Right on.
ribeye steaks,
Yeah.
because I want them to really know that I appreciate them, and they're not even my guys.
Right.
I only got like one or two guys in that whole 200 bunch, but out of respect for just what they do, my God. I mean, I just know how it is. I
Yeah.
remember those days where it was just like tired and just beat up and wanting to be lazy, but you can't ever be lazy.
No.
So I really am one of those guys that tries to do that, and I'm very appreciative of it. So
Well, that's awesome, and I'm really grateful that you're able to come on the show. I know how busy you are, and you've got calls coming in.
Yeah.
But just kind of hearing your story, I know it's just a fraction of it all, and in your book, I really look forward to reading that as well.
yeah,
And seeing how you just continue to evolve and impact the Permian Basin, the organizations, the companies, and field workers. And so not ever forgetting where you came from, where you started, and knowing that you're shining light for them when they're going through what you've been through in the past.
right. Yeah, I am working on my second book right now. I'm not actually like diving into it, but we're more just putting like a war board together to kind of figure out what the idea is going to be. So I think it's going to be actually called manipulated mindset to brainwash success. So I think that's it's kind of like edgy, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
But ultimately, what it's about is just understanding that you have to really brainwash yourself sometimes. Some people use brainwash as a bad terminology, but I think it's actually good. So you may have to wash your brain from some of the stuff you may already do
Right.
to teach yourself new tricks. And sometimes you need to wash your mind so you can understand how to evolve or grow, because you could be set in this certain mindset. And you got to sometimes, I always talk about being manipulating your own mind sometimes, because other people can manipulate you to do things. Why not you manipulate yourself and then do some brainwashing, so that way you can have a clear thought process to create a whole Picasso
Yeah.
of your own new, fresh ideas without any bias, without any, old stuff that you may have used. And
Right.
this is how you become creative and innovative and being able to evolve throughout the years to come. Every year, something new has happened. You get a new iPhone every year.
Yeah.
There's another $2,000 down the drain. All they
Right.
did was change one piece of the camera.
Right.
So you guys got to be able to keep evolving with the industry as we start as business and entrepreneurs. I'm an investor. I'm an entrepreneur now. I mean, before I was just a field guy, but this is
Right.
what the evolution has come to by me just making those sound decisions.
And being able to withstand to get to
Yes.
those levels,
That's a
because
big one.
that is it. It's the concept of success makes sense. It's executing it and being inside of it
Right.
daily and believing in yourself. And I agree, because it's like you almost have to really fake it till you feel it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, you're not faking it, but you have to embody that successful mindset and put yourself in those positions to where you're thinking differently. You're not using old narratives, or you're not using someone else's narrative.
Right.
You're not plucking out a mainstream media narrative that says, well, this is who you should be, or this is, this part of the country, or this demographic, or these people, or this man and woman, or this is what you should be doing, because then you have assumed roles, or you have assumed levels of success.
Right.
Like, well, then it's like, I mean, I went to college too, and then I'm like, what am I doing in the oil field? I'm not doing anything with my degrees, and then you can feel very discouraged from that. And so being able to say, you know what, I got this part done. Now I need to do this. Now I'm going to take some personal inventory, and now I'm going to grow again.
Right.
And you got to be able to just really get inside that grit to make it happen. So I understand what you're saying. It is edgy, but to manipulate your own brain, don't let someone else manipulate you, but be able to manipulate yourself into believing that you're worth it, and then you become that.
And that's why I feel like it meant for me. When I say it out loud, I'm like, does that make sense? But I know it does, because when I really thought of it, I was like, manipulated mindset to brainwash success, and it's gonna all come together in the book when I write it. But I'm gonna wait till I get a little bit more acclimated into what I'm doing, and I'll be able to have a full spectrum of like where I was when growing up. The one I wrote before was about from college to my experience in the oil field to where I'm at. Not all the way to where I'm at right now because I hadn't written that far. I stopped in 2020 when I got my master's degree is when I wrote it for that reason, for a capstone. But as I'm working on my dissertation now, I'm starting to learn more about how to structure these methodologies and qualitative and quantitative data collecting and stuff like that. I'm able to come with better ideas. And I think that's going to help me be more strategic in my book writing process because I feel like I'm more like not a baby as much as I'm able to collect things and put them into words and put them into perspective and line them out accordingly. Because sometimes you just write to it's structuring a book is so important to understand how to do because I wrote it and there was like so much red ink when I got a review back from it. I thought I was back in school or something. I said, wow, this is not what I thought it was going to be. I thought I'd just write and tell my story and that's it. Like, nah, you got to have structure. So that was a big part of learning. So I think this next one's going to be it's going to be really good.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah.
I mean, the evolution of Anthony Bolton, I can only imagine the years to come. You have a lot that you've done and
God
a lot
willing.
more ahead. And it's really exciting. So I really appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing this and, kind of wrapping up 2023. And you're already geared up for 2024 and beyond.
Absolutely. And my favorite quote, as always, I say is, if you don't build your own dreams, somebody will hire you to build theirs. And there's nothing wrong with working for somebody else as long as you be the best version of you.
Yeah,
and treat it like it's your own. And that's what I always did. I never complained. I never said I had a problem. I said we only have opportunities. We don't call them problems. We call them opportunities because they can always be fixed and they could always be, corrected. So we don't have problems. We have opportunities.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you again for coming on, Anthony. It was great having you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You bet.